Welcome to the Golden State Media Concepts, America's Still Beautiful podcast, a weekly news podcast covering all the top positive and uplifting news stories. Are you tired of the same old news? Are you sick of the seemingly endless political spin and negativity? We cover stories that will inspire, uplift, and remind you of the good in the world. Tune into the Golden State Media Concepts, America's Still Beautiful podcast to get all the great and positive news stories of today.
GSMC, America's Still Beautiful podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Alyssa Jo. Hello, how's it going today? I hope you're having a wonderful day. Where I am, the sun is shining and it is a beautiful day, so I hope the sun is shining wherever you are as well today. I'm super excited to be back and sharing more feel-good, positive stories with you today. Just with all of this craziness, chaos going on in our world, I am just so happy that this podcast is a thing because it is so important to be reminded of all the good things that are still happening in our world, the things that people do, the kindness people are spreading. It's just amazing. I love going through these stories and seeing, the positive side of the things that are happening in our world. It just makes me happy, and I hope it brings you a positive vibe to your day. So I'll stop rambling on about that and you can just jump right into it. So, as we know, there has been protests and rallies, riots, everything all over America, when people are very passionate about fighting for, racism and police brutality and all of that kind of stuff. And so many people have come together to fight for something that they strongly believe in. And it's not just people that are doing the protests. There's so many companies, individuals that are going above and beyond to try and do what they can to help wherever they can during this time. So Bank of America actually announced that they are committing to $1 billion over 4 years in additional support to help local communities address the economic and racial inequality, especially just in the wake of COVID-related economic shutdowns and downturn and all the healthcare needs. The CEO, Brian Mohayan, says the events of the past week have created a sense of true urgency that has arisen across our nation, particularly in view of the racial injustices we have seen in the communities where we work and we live. So the money will flow to economic programs involving jobs, training, small business support, housing. It's also going to add a new emphasis on health services for communities of color. $100 million will support its nonprofit partners across the 90 communities. $250 million will assist with lending to the smallest and minority-owned businesses through its support to community-developed financial and minority depository institutions. So not just that, very, very big companies, Apple, Facebook, Verizon, they're all promising millions of dollars to support civil rights groups. So in a memo to the Apple employees that was sent out by the CEO, Tim Cook, he promised action with $10 million. He says Apple is making donations to a number of groups, including the Equal Justice Initiative, which is a non-profit committed to challenging racial injustice, ending mass incarceration, and protecting the human rights of the most vulnerable people in American society. So $10 million, that's exciting, but I'm not just done there, it keeps going. The Facebook CEO, Mark Zuckerberg, said that the social network is committing an additional $10 million to groups working on racial justice and deciding which ones to donate by engaging its civil rights advisors and employees to identify organizations locally and nationally that can most effectively use it right now. He says, I know that $10 million can't fix this. It needs sustained long-term effort. And then Finally, Verizon is actually donating $10 million to various different groups. The CEO, Hans Vestberg, said. He said the Verizon Foundation has committed $10 million to social justice organizations shared equally between these organizations. The National Urban League, the NAACP, National Action Network, Leadership Conference for Civil and Human Rights, Rainbow Push Coalition, National Coalition on Black Civic Participation, and the NAACP Legal Defense and Educational Fund. So there you go. Big things are happening. I know there's a lot of craziness right now, but there are people that are trying to do whatever they can to make this better as quickly as possible. Now, keep it on that train. You might have caught this on Saturday. I know this isn't, I wish I could share this information with you before Saturday, but I was reading this story and it put a smile to my face. So whether you caught this on TV or not, but the Sesame Street joined CNN to host a town hall just addressing racism on Saturday, this past Saturday on the 6th. So basically back in April, Sesame Street partnered with CNN to explain the ABCs of coronavirus. This is like a televisioned town hall for parents and kids. And now they wanted to educate, their families and the children about racism. So Big Bird co-hosted with CNN commentator Van Jones and reporter Erica Hill. It was really great. I did see a glimpse of it on social media, but it was just really cool that Sesame Street became a part of it. So Sesame Street has never been afraid to address society's dark or scary side with kids. They've always kind of tried to educate as much as possible. There's a new Muppet that was introduced back in 2011 who struggled with hunger. And then there was another Muppet moved onto the street who had autism. And they even debuted a character who has HIV positive in 2009. So Sesame Street has always been upfront and forward about the things that they have, that they want to educate children about. And I just wanted to share this story because, first of all, it was a really cool thing to see on TV. It's just another thing to talk about and to recognize that, Sesame Street, it's not just about educating all the adults and everything. We have to educate the children, and I just love that Sesame Street will always go above and beyond and make sure they are educating the kids in the proper way, in the best way possible, I think. How do you not want to learn about racism through Big Bird? I just have to say. So, there's been lots of protests, there's been some riots, but there has been some really amazing stories about leadership and guidance and people who have kind of taken the ringleader and tried to lead the peaceful protests and tried to do what they can to be the leader in a situation that is quite scary for most people. So my next story is about a man who he's only 16 years old. His name is Stefan Perez. He was marching around downtown Detroit with about 15 people. As he was kind of marching around, more and more joined him, and he kind of became this leader of a very large crowd. But he vowed to keep everybody in line, safe, peaceful, and then also get them back home safely. So after the end of the march, there was no looting, there was no fights. He basically just urged the protesters to comply with the city's 8 p.m. curfew so that no one would get hurt. He had a megaphone in his hand, and he kept everyone calm and put together, and he said that they were really scared, but they were comforted with his peaceful intentions, and he tried to make sure that, everyone around them too that wasn't protesting just knew that they were there to be peaceful. He says, I tried to keep everybody together. I tried to keep everybody as a collective group, and we marched. I'm surprised people didn't listen to me. I'm surprised people listened to me. I'm glad they did because they're not hurt right now because they could have been. So there was a reporter that was interviewing him during this march, and then the mayor, Mike Duggan, called on somebody's phone, and the call was broadcast via kind of speakerphone on Facebook Live. You might have seen this, but he said, son, I was watching the video and I saw your leadership. I have tears in my eyes. You are everything that's special about the city of Detroit. We're going to fight this injustice because of people like you. And he actually replied with, some police officers walked with us in uniform who stand united with us today, and I'm glad that you do too. And, the mayor actually asked to meet him later on the week, so who knows what's to come for that. But he just was very proud of Stefan and the leadership role that he played. So basically, he said he wanted to add into, Stefan said, it wasn't just the mayor that was kind of praising him for the kind things and leadership that he was doing. He said if it wasn't for his grandmother, he wouldn't be where he is today. He says, as a teenager, I have put her through a lot of stuff, but she stuck by my side when I needed it the most, and she'd be proud of what we accomplished tonight. The fact that I was able to put my hand up and stop everybody from causing trouble here tonight, I look back and smile at that moment. The people followed me into battle, and I'm glad that I was able to get them home safely. So there you go. That was just another example of somebody who is leading the peaceful protest, who's doing what they can to try to raise as much awareness and help out in every way possible, but always staying calm and peaceful and kind to one another and property and all of that stuff. Now it is time for a little bit of a break, but don't go anywhere. When we get back, I have another story about a former NFL player and what he did to rally some people together for some peaceful protests in Phoenix, actually. I have a story about the first Black valedictorian, and then later on in the episode, we will also I got some new scientific discoveries for you. I got some positive things about the coronavirus, and I will finish off with a pretty funny story today. So you don't want to miss the rest of the episode. Stay tuned. We will be right back.
The GSMC Life and Happiness podcast takes you on a journey of exploration. We'll discuss tried and true methods alongside the latest trends of how to best live your life to its fullest and happiest. From psychology to meditation, science to self-help books, the GSMC Life and Happiness podcast will help you to discover what makes you happy and how you can live life being the best you possible. Download the GSMC Life and Happiness podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Welcome back to GSMC, America's Still Beautiful podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Alyssa Jo. We are back. Okay, so my next story is about a former NFL player, and he basically sent out a tweet, and it actually rallied in so many people to clean up Phoenix after some protests were happening. So his name is Marquette King. He's an American football player, and he's just being praised by his community and everybody for his tweet that brought this huge group of volunteers to downtown Phoenix to clean up the city. So there was some peaceful protests that turned quite destructive in his city just last week, and he wanted to put a call into action, and he wanted to clean up the city. So he tweeted, "I'm going to be downtown Phoenix at 10ish with gloves and trash bags cleaning up the city. All races are welcome to come clean the city with me. Officers should come too. Let's get to know each other." So he actually played 6 years in the NFL for the Oakland Raiders and Denver Broncos, and he last played for the St. Louis Battlehawks in the XFL. But some of the volunteers who joined him definitely knew him from his football career. This was including a former Arizona State University quarterback, Robert Nelson. But others were just simply inspired by his positive message and just wanted to help out. Someone said, "I just went to Twitter and searched up Phoenix cleanup, and he saw Marquette's post. I didn't even know who he was." So he just came. There was so many people that went downtown and cleaned up just because of his tweet. He says, "I'm all about peace and love. That's why I want my messages to be." He hopes that his little group will inspire those who want to make a positive difference in their communities. On Twitter later that day, he actually thanked all those who came out to help. He said, "It's okay to be different. I chose to make an impact in showing love and peace. Make a difference, but be smart and calculated." Phoenix isn't the only city actually where so many volunteers are coming out to clean up. In Seattle, a group of dedicated citizens of all ages came together to clean up as well. The mayor, Jenny Durkin, praised those who showed up to help and said, "What I love to see here is so many people coming downtown to help clean up, to remove graffiti, to reclaim the city that they love. That's the spirit we have to be about going forward, is people coming together and finding a way to really acknowledge the challenges that we have, make them better, but still love our city." The police chief, Carmen Bess, also, kind of echoed the mayor's praise and said, "I'm totally inspired. It's totally gratifying and so wonderful and heartening to see all these people out there, volunteers helping to clean up the destruction and the graffiti and all of the damage from the night before. I'm really hopeful that the calmer heads will prevail and they won't come into our beautiful city and make it look like this again." So there's just, some positive things that are still happening. I know there's been some destructive craziness, but there's also those groups of people who are going above and beyond to make sure that they clean up and protect the cities that they love. So we always have to remember that positive aspect of it. Now I want to share with you a story about the first Black valedictorian at Princeton. So, of course, aside from, the commencement speech that he had to do, it was online for the first time at Princeton. It was delivered exclusively just over the internet. But his name is Nicholas Johnson, and it was just extra newsworthy, they said, because, he is the first Black valedictorian in Princeton history. So along with, concentration in operations, research, and financial engineering, he's actually a Canadian student, and he studied statistics and machine learning, along with some mathematics and computing. So the engineer said that knowing what to build in order to improve the world is the crucial first step. It requires an intimate familiarity and engagement with the present state of the world, coupled with the capacity to unabashedly dream of distinctly different future. He was actually back in his home in Montreal, and he also quoted Michelle Obama from the graduating class of 85, says, It was possible, I knew, to live on two planes at once, to have one's feet planted in reality but pointed in the direction of progress. You may live in the world as it is, but you can still work to create the world as it should be. So he says that his achievement serves as inspiration to Black students coming up behind me. So he was very proud to be the first Black valedictorian of Princeton, and hope this, continues. He says, it's kind of a bummer, of course. The virtual commencement had to, it was all online, but he was just so happy that he got to do this. He said there was a live in-person ceremonies also planned for, a little bit later on down the road. But he is going to be spending his summer interning as a hybrid quantitative researcher and software developer, before beginning his PhD studies at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology this fall. Now, I also want to mention Danielle Geethers. She was elected president of the Undergraduate Association last month, and this is the first time in the school's 159-year history that a Black woman rose to govern the student body. So that's also pretty cool. She's majoring in mechanical engineering, and she's a rising junior, and she served as the school's diversity officer just last year. She plans to use her platform to make the school as inclusive as possible, she says. Although some people think it's just a figurehead role, figureheads can matter in terms of people seeing themselves in terms of representation. Seeing yourself at a college is kind of an important part of the admissions process. So about 6% of undergraduates at MIT are Black and 47% are women, according to the school. I thought that was a cool little statistic to add in there. But there you have it, the first Black valedictorian, as well as the first elected president undergrad association last month, the first Black woman to be a part of that. So pretty cool. I thought I would share that with you guys. Now, with everything kind of coming slowly wrapping to an end. People are slowly going back to work where possible amid the whole COVID-19 crisis. But some people were welcomed. Some employees were welcomed back with more than just, excitement to be back in the office. There's these employees in New Zealand. They were pretty excited to be going back to work, and they were quite nervous, though, about the state of the business. So Jenny Beck is an attorney who runs a law office in New Zealand. She heard, many small businesses were in dire straits because they depended on tourism. So this is where she got the idea. So at her first staff meeting with everyone back from the lockdown, she says the mood was quite anxious and everyone seemed a little tense. But, instead of, giving them salary cuts or trying to, have to explain if there's any terrible money problems going on or anything like that, she actually surprised all 14 of her employees with $1,000 in cash. So yeah, going back to work after a lockdown and you get handed $1,000 in cash. Pretty awesome, right? She says, I told them and just about everyone cried and I just felt like crying myself. So she didn't just give them $1,000 just as here, have $1,000. She said that she gave very stern words on to spend the cash on small businesses, suggesting that they take a long weekend, they pay for accommodation, food at local restaurants and tourist attractions just to help get the local economies rolling again. She said, I also thought it would be fun in that my staff would be able to report back on their breaks and give everyone a positive boost. So that definitely brightened the first staff meeting at the office, and they each got $1,000 to sternly spend on local businesses, because those, we have to start rebuilding those local businesses back up, and especially with tourism, that is a huge one. So many companies are suffering when they rely highly on tourism. So go out and spend local every single chance you get. I love local things. I love local shops, and I think it's just so important to continue to support local small businesses every single chance you get. Now, I hope you are enjoying these stories so far. I feel like today I just wanted to bring lots of positivity as much as possible because of everything going on. But it is time for another break. Don't go anywhere when we get back. I do have a story about some scientists who use gene targeting breakthrough against COVID-19. So that is exciting to stay tuned for, as well as the story about the hotels who have been open during lockdown. They've been housing homeless locals, but now those locals are repaying the favor. So I have a story about that, as well as the world's first bios park. You probably have no idea what that is, but I will explain it to you shortly. Stay tuned. Don't go anywhere.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Welcome back to GSMC, America's Still Beautiful podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Alyssa Jo. Okay, we are back for the last stretch of today's episode. I have a few more good stories to share with you, so let's just jump right back into it. So I mentioned that some hotels were staying open during lockdowns. They were just helping. First of all, a lot of hotels were staying open to help frontline workers during this time, all the nurses and things like that needed, maybe a place that was closer to the hospital, whatever the case may be. But there was also lots of hotels that were staying open during the lockdowns to house homeless locals. So now these homeless locals are actually returning the favor. They wanted to repay them as much as they could, but just some odd jobs. So I thought I would share this story. I think it's always so cool when people start to pay pay it forward or pay it back when they get, a nice gesture. So hotel staffers have been, just hailed as heroes during this stuff because so many hotels have stayed open. The hotel staffers have stayed and, can't even imagine the amount of cleaning and all the things they must be doing right now. But in the heartwarming show of gratitude, these guests that were put up into these rooms, they started doing some odd jobs around the hotel. So gardening, cleaning the rooms, building new brick walls, patios, all these different things. And so this was actually in a hotel called Fonus Hotel in Worcester, England, that I'm sharing with you. But there has been stories about hotels all over the world with people doing the exact same thing. But they actually put up 45 homeless people at the Fonus Hotel in Worcester. It's a 60-room hotel, which normally charges up to £155 per night. And they were open to provide shelter to people that were living on the streets during this time. So one of the homeless guests, his name is Eddie. He is a former bricklayer, and he actually built a wall and a patio at the hotel. And he said, I did it because I was bored, but also as a thank you to the staff. They've really looked after me. There was another guest, 48 years old, Peter Swinburne. He's been homeless for 25 years, and he said that the staff's kindness saved him. Doesn't it just give you goosebumps? He says, I've never slept in a double bed before. I am happy to be here. This is a 5-star hotel putting up homeless people. Another one, Terrence Marriott, said he'd been staying at the hotel for 6 weeks, and he said, I have been well looked after. It has been so excellent. The food is also excellent, he added. I feel a lot healthier than when I came in. The hotel has joined forces with a homeless charity, which has been hosting workshops on how to manage these guests' addictions, seek benefits, secure future accommodation for them. So, it's not just a stopover. Well, I guess it is kind of a stopover, but they are helping push these people to continue to do better after all of this, after they do have to leave the hotel, giving them as many resources and things like that as they can to help out. So there's 3 hotel bars they were completely cleared of the alcohol just as a precaution, and no alcohol is permitted on the hotel grounds. So they put in some things in place so that they were trying to keep everyone in line and safe. The assistant manager, Julie Merrick, says, our new guests have been lovely and grateful for the support they had been given and treat their rooms with respect. We stayed open simply because we just wanted to help. So management of the hotel has been maintained by just a crew of 11 people. And they've just kind of kept everything in order and running, and they're just super thankful that they were able to help out people during this time. This is not the first time that this hotel in particular has helped people. It's home to 30 people who were forced to leave their homes during the regional flooding. That was back in February. Staff has been offered personal protective equipment, including gloves, face masks, aprons, but there was no cases of COVID-19 that were reported in this hotel, so that's also really awesome. The restaurant employees have been working 7 days a week in order to provide 3-course meals to these guests, delivered directly to their hotel rooms in disposable containers to reduce the risk of virus transmission. So there you go. They took all the precautions. They were helping out as much as they can, and then they got some payback. They got some new walls built, some gardening done, cleaning done from these really thankful people who got to stay at the hotel. Now, let's talk about coronavirus. So, scientists have used gene targeting breakthrough against COVID-19 cells, and it's called it's CRISPR tool, and it's called Pac-Man. Yes, Pac-Man, like the game. So scientists from Stanford University have found the perfect partners to work on a gene-targeting antiviral agent against COVID-19. They teamed up with researchers at the Molecular Foundry, which is a nanoscience user facility located at the Department of Energy's Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory, so the Berkeley Lab. So an assistant professor in the departments of bioengineering and chemical and system biology at Stanford University, him and his team begun working on a technique called Pac-Man. So, or you can call it prophylactic antiviral CRISPR in human cells. basically, it uses the gene editing tool CRISPR to fight influenza. So when I say CRISPR, it's CRISPR, to fight influenza. So all this changed in January when the news of COVID-19 happened. And now his team were suddenly confronted with this mysterious new virus. They had, no one had a clear solution. So they started using their Pac-Man technology to fight it. Thought, let's give it a shot. So since late March, this team has been collaborating with a group led by so many different people, as well as Michael Connolly, a principal scientific engineering associate in the biological nanostructures facility at Berkeley's lab. And they developed a system that delivers Pac-Man into the cells of a patient. So I guess it's all in delivery. It's kind of confusing. There's lots of science behind it. But basically the key challenge to translating Pac-Man from a molecular tool into an anti-COVID-19 therapy is finding an effective way to deliver it into the lungs. So the coronavirus that causes COVID-19 that invades the lungs, the air sacs, basically are infected, and this person can become inflamed and fill with fluid, and it's hijacking the patient's ability to breathe. So basically he says, but my lab doesn't work on delivery methods. So they've been really working on trying to put this gene targeting Pac-Man tool in good use for COVID-19. So they learned of some of the other work with colony and the synthetic molecules called lipidoids at the Molecular Foundry. And these lipidoids are a type of synthetic peptide mimic known as peptoid, which was first discovered 20 years ago by the colony's mentor, who is Ron Zuckerman. And basically they work to develop this peptoid delivery molecules such as lipidoids. And in collaboration with the Molecular Foundry, they demonstrated lipidoids' effectiveness in the delivery of DNA and RNA to a wide variety of cell lines. So basically, the test in human cells performed very well. In late April, the Stanford researchers tested a type of lipidoid that self-assembles DNA, RNA into Pac-Man carriers in a sample of human lung cells. And then according to this team, it performed very well. And then when packaged with coronavirus targeting Pac-Man, the system reduced the amount of synthetic SARS-CoV-2 in solution by more than 90%. So this is all really good. It's a lot of science behind it. It's a little bit confusing, but if you can gather anything from all of this, they are making more steps forward, finding new ways to try to target COVID-19, and people all over the world are doing everything they can to try and make it happen. So he says everyone has been working around the clock trying to come up with new solutions. It's very rewarding to combine expertise and test new ideas across institutions in these difficult times. So everyone's kind of working together, and they say an effective lipidoid delivery coupled with CRISPR targeting could enable a very powerful strategy for fighting viral disease, not only against COVID-19, but possibly against newly viral strains with pandemic potential. So there you go, some positivity that we have to add in. Now, I want to mention the Bios Park. It was the world's first Bios Parks, and basically what it is, it allows you to bury your cremated remains of loved ones so that they can grow into trees. How wonderful is that? It's so cool. So the world's cemeteries are quickly running out of grave space, and so this actually happened in a park in Canada. It's called the Bios Park. And they've been coming up with new ways to help people mourn their loved ones, and they've come up with this creating of a bios urn. And so it's a biodegradable urn containing a tree planting mixture, and it can be combined with cremated remains of a beloved family member or even your pet. And then once it's planted to the ground, the urn blossoms into a tree that can support the planet while also serving as a living memorial for the deceased. Isn't that an awesome thing? I just think it's so cool. I would love to go, visit my family member tree. I just think that's a really cool way to go visit your family member or your friend or family, whoever has passed away, and it just helps the environment as well. So they're actually shipping these urns and the planters to more than 50 countries around the world. It's about $140 for one of the planters, but you will be seeing them all over. Right now it is just in Canada, but they have been shipping everywhere. So if this is something that you think is pretty cool, definitely go check it out. It's called Bios Parks, and you will see so much information on it. Now, I want to finish off today's episode with something I thought was kind of funny. This man, he's 65 years old, and during lockdown, he decided to make a hillbilly hot tub using an old fishing pond and a boat motor, and that's literally what he did. I'm going to actually post the picture up on our social media pages, so go check that out soon. But he literally takes an old fishing pond and a boat motor, and he made his own hot tub during lockdown. It just made me chuckle. The picture is funny. Definitely go check it out on our social media. But I just had to leave off on that funny story. You can do anything with your spare time, even create your own hot tub. I'm talking, it's literally like a plastic tub, basically, with a motor in it. Kind of genius, honestly. I might have to do it. I probably won't, but I think it's hilarious. All right. Well, that is all of the stories I have to share with you today. Thank you so much for listening to GSMC, America's Still Beautiful podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Alyssa Jo. I really appreciate you being here. Please do not forget to hit that subscribe button, to like and follow us on social media, and leave a 5-star review. It is greatly appreciated, and I look forward to next time. Stay safe. Stay positive, keep spreading kindness every single chance you get, and I will be back with more positive stories to share with you next time. Thank you.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts, America's Still Beautiful podcast, part of the GSMC Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcasts on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type in GSMC to find all of our shows. From the GSMC Podcast Network, from social media news to marketing news, and even weird news, the GSMC Podcast Network has you covered. You can also follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's episode of the Golden State Media Concepts, America's Still Beautiful podcast.